Okay, we're just going to talk about right now graphing transformations of the sine and cosine functions, just so that you can kind of get it wrapped around your brains a little bit. All right, so when you're trying to find amplitude, it's just the coefficient of the function itself. So the number in front to the left of it will be the amplitude. If it's an integer, it means it will be taller. If that would have been a fractional number, it would be, so taller means this, and shorter means this. So let's see if it was half as tall. It looks something like that. Okay. Let me get rid of these things down here. So, amplitude is the tallness or shortness. It doesn't increase how many waves or where it's moved to, just how tall or how short the original graph is. Okay? Then the period. So for the sine and cosine, the normal one period is to 2 pi. So it starts up for cosine, it starts up here at 1, and it returns to positive 1 in this 2 pi period. So that's its normal period. So when you're finding the period, if the period is different than that, you're looking at the coefficient to the theta, or coefficient to the x. And this is the process. You take the regular period, which is 2 pi, and divide it by the coefficient, which is 4. Well, 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2, so that is pi half. So what that means is that the entire period now of this new graph will occur. So this whole thing right here will now occur in this distance. So there will be one of these right here, but in this distance, this whole thing will be kind of crammed into this amount of space. However, there's also a phase shift. When there is something added or subtracted inside parentheses, in this case it's subtracted pi 6, normally you just do the opposite of pi 6, so the opposite of negative pi 6 is positive pi 6, and you would shift it to the right, pi 6. However, for phase shift, you look at the amount that it's going to be shifted, and then you divide it by the coefficient to that x. So in this case, divided by 4. Well, pi 6 divided by 4, if you write it like that, well, remember when you're dividing fractions, you flip the second fraction, and then it becomes pi 24ths. So the phase shift, the phase shifts equals pi 24ths. So in this case, because that's a negative sign right there, or subtract sign, we're going to shift everything pi 24ths. Well, look at, if this is pi 6, pi 24ths is just going to be a little bit. So we have our information. We know that, and I'm going to change the new graph to a new color. We know that it's going to be tall, and we know that it shifted pi 24. So right next to the 3, I'm going to shift it just a little bit, pi 24ths. And I know it's going to be up there at 3 again, just a little bit, because it's been shifted pi 24ths, just a little past pi halves. So halfway between 0 and pi halves is pi 4. So down here at -3, just shifted a little bit, there'll be another mark. And then halfway between pi 4, 0 and pi 4 is pi 8. That's where it's going to cross the 0. So now you kind of have some markers to make that graph. And I'm not going to draw that. It's really difficult for me. I haven't figured out how to draw a very smooth line on my Surface Pro. But now you get the gist. And again, in pi halves again. So at pi, we're going to be up here. And halfway between, we're going to be a little bit past there. And then at 3 pi halves, we're again, whoops, we're just going to go a little bit beyond 3 pi halves because it's shifted. I'm going to try not to hit the side of the, there we go. And then again at 2 pi, just a little bit past 2 pi. And now notice, there's going to be 4 of these. Well, in the parent function, in the normal function, there is 1 of those dips. But in this new transformation, there are 4 of those dips. So the other thing to keep in mind, that when the period, when the coefficient to the x is an integer, there's going to be many more waves. Or if it would have been a fractional, it would have taken twice as long, possibly, to get one of those dips. So if the coefficient to x is an integer, it's going to be more wavy. If it's a fraction, it will be less wavy. Okay, I hope that helps with your graphing.